Welcome, my name is Victoria Bedford and I am a spiritual alchemist, bringing my story of healing to as many people as I can, hoping to empower them to use the tools that I have found, the tools that are available to everyone, to give education, understanding and knowledge so that you can be your own alchemist, so that you can change your own energy. You can start working on your things. This video is going to be about understanding conflict, understanding how we manage conflict, how conflict arises, and what is called the drama triangle, which is quite often at the forefront of a lot of conflict and how we mismanage it and not know how to use it. So the Karpman triangle was created by Stephen Karpman in 1961, who is a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, I think. I'm sure, actually. And he focused on psychology and understanding human behavior. Now, psychology on its own, just like working on the mind on its own, is not going to be as beneficial as understanding the connection between the mind, body and soul. And one thing that I have found on my healing journey, that yes, it's amazing to be doing somatic therapy, but to be doing holistic work and understanding it. But it was just as important to learn psychology. So through my healing, I've read numerous and oh my God, so many books I can't even explain on psychology, on healing trauma, on understanding trauma, understanding how to grow as a person. And the Karpman triangle was one of the main things that I come across that impacted my healing the most. Holistic healing and understanding how to heal from things that have happened to you really does incorporate psychology and human behavior, but also emotions of the internal, your soul, your body, and who you're wanting to be and the things that you have been through. Energy gets stored in here as well as in here. Now, growing up, I did suffer trauma. Trauma is different for everybody. And when we hear the word trauma, we believe we must have gone through something completely huge, like a car crash, like, I don't know, something so big that you could label it trauma. But the truth of the matter is, having emotional, unavailable parents is trauma. Having parents who shout all the time is trauma. Having parents who spanked or hit you is trauma. Having parents who couldn't meet a need that you may have had is trauma. Now, did that parent mean to do that? Majority of the time, no. And the likelihood is no. But does that mean you have not been affected by the things? Absolutely not. It doesn't mean that. And we quite often invalidate our own pains because we don't know what to label them. We don't think they're trauma. But so trauma is not about a one-time situation. It's not about what has occurred. Trauma is about how it has affected your body. And people are used to living a life a certain way that of course it won't feel like trauma because it's normalized. A parent not being emotional is normalized. A parent being too clingy is normalized for the person growing up. A parent working all the time is normalized. A parent drinking is normalized for some people. So many things that unfortunately our parents weren't able to heal. This is not parent bashing, by the way. This is how we work on inner child. We work through society and how that's impacted us in our childhood. We work through how our childhood from our parents or our grandparents, the economy, how that's impacted us, depending on if you've grown up in a deprived place or not. All these things have such an impact in how you grow up. So when I finally had my breakdown in 2015, I was faced with two choices, sink or swim. Basically, do something that was going to lead me to not be here no more because that's exactly where I was feeling, or start a healing journey. Now, in some of my other videos, I do speak about some of the reasons that led me to healing, and I won't be able to speak about them in this video because, well, you want a video on what I'm talking about. But to get a little bit of an understanding of who I am and some of the things that I've been through, then do pop over to some of my other YouTube videos. So first of all, what is the Karpman triangle? It is 3 roles played by the same person that interlink with other people that play those 3 roles. So the three roles that are played interlinking with you and with other people are the persecutor, the victim, and the rescuer. The persecutor is somebody who is quite rigid. So when you slip into that behaviours, it's quite rigid, it can be slightly aggressive, you can come across as dominant, maybe sometimes bullying. You are eager to get your side across. It is this way, this is how I feel. You don't get to tell me any different, or this is how I want things. And then there is the rescuer mode. The mode that I will help you, I will do that for you, don't worry about me, I've got lots going on, but if you need me, I'll be there. I will self-sacrifice, I will give you. I'm almost telling you that you need me and I need you. And then you have the victim role. The victim role is the poor me, I don't know how I'm gonna get through it, it's really hard, how am I gonna cope? And this is why people end up in stages in their life of going up and down, but also stages of their life where they're in conflict and they don't know how to resolve it. When I was starting to work on my emotional regulation, and I was starting to recognise how I got angry and how I didn't want to feel that anger no more, I wanted to process it, and I wanted to show up different, and I wanted to deal with things calmer, or how I wanted to put in boundaries. I realised boundaries were important. I realised I needed to say how I felt, and I realised I needed to take time out. When I started to grow in that way and become emotionally mature, and there is a video of emotional maturity on my YouTube. I will put the link in and under this YouTube. When I started to do that, I started to notice how I was still getting into conflict with others, how there was still battles with others of me trying to get my needs met, they're trying to get their needs met. And no matter how much I tried to show up and deal with things differently, I still ended up in this conflict. One minute I was the persecutor, then I was the victim, and then I was the rescuer. And I started to do some research because I knew that as a part of emotionally regulating and a part of becoming healthy, part of that was changing some of the toxic cycles I had learned. So with my parents, you would get into arguments and then they'd be really sorry and then they would be the victim. And I was like, what kind of cycle is this? What is going on? And when I started to research it and realise people get their needs met a certain way, people are used to getting their needs met how they've been taught. And we all slip in, not all of us, because this doesn't affect everyone. This affects people who've come from unhealthy homes or homes with some behaviours that haven't allowed them to emotionally mature. One of these will be somebody's primary. So my primary was the rescuer because as a child, I constantly needed to emotionally rescue my mum because she was going through stuff with my dad. I wasn't able to really slip into the victim because if I slipped into the victim, that would take a victim role away from my mum. So I was primarily the rescuer. But as I grew older, I become more victim because I was angry at my parents for the life that I had, for the things that happened. And then I also become the victim and the persecutor. I would persecute my parents. Then I would feel victimised by my parents. And then because I felt so bad of all the things that I said and done, I would try and rescue my parents by being an extra good young adult for them. And I started to recognise this in cycles when I was researching it. When I was starting to heal, and you go down this rabbit hole, you type in emotional regulation, you start to learn that, and then you come across different modes of healing and understanding. And I come across the Cartman cycle. And I started to look at how every time I engaged in conflict or conversation with my parent or my siblings, it was constantly in that cycle. And then it became the same with my friends because, well, like attracts like. I didn't have the healthiest of friends because I wasn't the healthiest of people. I knew I had to change. I knew I needed something different. I really knew. So I started to research the roles. I started to research, why do we slip into these roles? We slip into these roles because we don't feel good enough. We slip into these roles because we don't feel good enough, we don't feel valued, and we feel insecure. Now, of course I felt insecure. I grew up in a home where my dad was so emotionally unavailable. My mum was screaming all of the time. alcoholism. Of course I felt insecure. I didn't know how to feel secure. I had an insecure attachment with my parents. A majority of people that enter into these cycles have an insecure attachment to a parent. And I will do another video on an insecure attachment and what it means and attachment styles. But when you have an insecure attachment to a parent and an insecure attachment style, you don't feel secure. You don't know when a situation's going to kick off. You don't know whether you can say something. You don't know. You're on eggshells and tender hooks. And when things are good, you're constantly waiting, is something going to go wrong? So I started to look at the cycle that when I said something to my mum trying to own it, even though I wasn't being the persecutor, because I wasn't bullying, I wasn't being angry or aggressive, I was just trying to say it in a nice way, my mum would slip instantly into victim mode, which would trigger me because I hadn't yet fully healed and understood this cycle. Then I would slip into persecutor mode. So I'd try and put a boundary in of, Mum, I can't see you twice a week. I can't do all that for you. Mum, I'm going through my own things, and I feel like some of the things I went through as a child and try to process. My mum, how dare you? I had my own things. I didn't do anything to you. Well, she did have her own things, but she wasn't taking any responsibility for how that's impacted me. So she was in victim mode. Then I would go to either rescuer mode. Okay, Mum, I'll come out and see you. Okay, Mum, no worries. I'll come out and see you and spend some time with you. Or I would go into persecutor mode. How dare you? I am sick of you dominating me. And then she would go into rescuer mode. Oh, I'm sorry, Vicky. You know, I don't mean it like that. And then I may go into victim mode. Oh, Mum, you always do this to me. And the cycle continues. And then it can happen with a friend. You speak to a friend. I'm really unhappy that you don't invite me out. You never invite me out. You always do this. They then slip into either victim mode. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you always arguing with me? Or they slip into rescuer mode. Oh, we'll go out tomorrow. We'll do this. When we constantly enter into that triangle, each person's getting their need met. So the person that's in persecutor role is getting their need met of control. I need you to know how I am hurt, how I am feeling, how this is impacting me. The rescuer's getting their need met by, I don't feel good enough, so I want to show them that I really am a good friend. I really am there for them. Or victim mode of, I don't want to take personal responsibility for the fact that maybe I could have done something different. So I'm just gonna be the victim, because being the victim is very real. There's a difference between being a victim of a situation that you had no control over. That you're a victim. You know, and we need to really understand there's a difference between victim and victimization and victimhood. If you are a victim of something, then you're a victim. But people who place themselves in victimization and victim roles are people that disempower themselves because they don't know how to take responsibility. They don't know how to deal with something. So they will slip into a victim role. I don't know. How can you treat me like this? I'm so tired. I'm poorly. You don't know what I'm going through. We all know people who do that. But do we ever see it when we do it ourselves? Now, how do I come out of that mode? How do we take ourselves out of that drama triangle? Because if you constantly enter it, you'll cycle with everybody. Or with certain people who don't know how to have healthy relationships. You'll constantly cycle and nothing will be resolved and there'll be frustrations all the time. So how do you start to come out of it? You build your skill set. You build your skill set of assertiveness. So you start to become self-aware. There's a video on my YouTube about becoming self-aware. You have to start becoming self-aware of when you are starting to be pulled in to a drama triangle. And you will know, because you will see somebody, you know, whether it's your friend or your family member, you will know when you're trying to put in a boundary and they are telling you how bad everything is, and you will have understanding for that, but you know that you can't go and save them because you've done it too often, you're drained and you're tired. So them being a victim is getting their need met by you showing up and doing something for them. You see how that manipulation works? People get something. So if they're in victimhood, people manage them, people help them, people overcompensate for them, or they feel so lonely and they can blame everyone for their problems. And I know this sounds harsh, please believe me. I know it does, because when I was researching it and when I was working on myself with it, it felt like a kick in the teeth. When I started to realise that I did this, when I started to realise that actually, yes, I did manipulate people. I didn't know I was doing that, and I didn't mean to do that, but actually that's what I was doing. And I wanted to become more mindful and aware because I wanted healthier relationships. And if you're manipulating people, the likelihood is people are manipulating you, because that's what happens. We don't understand the art of manipulation, so we don't know when it's happening. And then we get pulled in by a friend again, and we go there, you know, they tell us they didn't have any money, and we lend them money, and then again they've gone and got their nails done, and you think, you made me believe you had no money. And then we feel angry with ourselves, even if we don't tell them that we've done it again, we've fed into them. But you've entered into it because you gave them that money as the rescuer, because you wanted to feel good about yourself. You wanted to feel as if you were helping somebody. So how do we start getting off this? We do become self-aware, know when we are being pulled in it, and know when we are acting it ourselves. Even with our children. Our children will be trying to get their needs met in ways. And us being on that cycle with them is not empowering them to know effective forms of communication. So become assertive by empathizing with them, learning compassion. Learning to empathize with somebody, because empathizing with them is not the same as sympathy. You can empathize with somebody without having to save them. So now, once upon a time, every time my friend rang me for something minor happening, I would be straight at the door trying to save her. And I would think, well, you made it out to be so much bigger than it was, and here I am babysitting your child for 2 days, when actually that wasn't that big a situation. You're now out with your friends, or coming around to clean your house because you're depressed, but actually you're out doing your friend's housework, but there's me helping you. I used to recognise when this was happening, so using my self-awareness. And then I used to empathise with her and say, I'm really sorry that you're going through that. I wouldn't make excuses and say, I'm really sorry, but I can't come round right now. Yeah, there was times I did slip into that. But I would empathise and just say, I'm really sorry, this is what you're going through. You could even say, you know, I can help you, but there is a limitation to that, unfortunately, because I've got a lot going on myself. Starting to engage in communication that isn't aggressive, and that, no, I can't help you this time. Honestly, I'm so busy. Or passive aggressive, where you don't answer the phone. Where you don't answer the phone because you just know it's going to be another phone call of them asking you for something, or them offloading how they feel. Instead, you get to actively be aware and choose, right now is not the time for me to answer that phone call. Or, I'm going to answer it, but I'm going to put some boundaries in. When you are self-aware, you are less likely to rescue. You are less likely to, you know, because victimization, we can see people and ourselves when we slip into the poor me. Now, people will go, well, how dare you tell me not to feel sorry for myself? That is completely different. Feeling your emotions and sitting in your emotions is completely different than look at how everything's going wrong and actually manipulating others. And it's hard to say, but I've done it, manipulating others with I don't know how I'm going to do this, I don't know how I'm going to get through, I don't know, because you're actually giving your power away to somebody else. You're enabling somebody else to have your power. There is something called the empowerment dynamic, so TED. Okay, and the empowerment dynamic really does help you get off that drama triangle, because the empowerment dynamic is about you focusing on your wants, you focusing on your dreams and your desires. Because for me, how I got off that triangle is I focused on the fact I needed peace in my life. I focused on the fact that I wanted healthy relationships in my life. And the more I focused on that, and the more I focused on the positive alternatives, the more I realised how much the traumas that I had been through and how I was constantly entering into those cycles was really affecting my mental health. Because you don't get to constantly enter these cycles without it seriously affecting your mental health. And it's quite common for personality disorders to be somebody that enters into the drama triangle all of the time. Personality disorders, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, you know, but people in general who have been through different situations in childhood. If you've not been taught emotional regulation, if you've not been taught how to manage conflict, you're not going to know how to do it. Your parents didn't know how to do it. But what you can do is you can become aware that you don't want the same life of conflict. Because conflict without resolution is just conflict. It's just crap. It's just nothing. Conflict with resolution has meaning. We're not here to avoid conflict, because conflict creates growth. Conflict can create bonding. Conflict can create deeper understanding. But you have to have some form of resolution. And with that resolution, it has to be understanding that there's not always anybody who's right. When you start to exit the drama triangle, you start to realise it's not about people being right. People can be in victim mode, and you can say, I can see that, but I'm not entering into it. People can be in persecutor mode. You can see that and not enter into it. You don't have to become the victim or rescuer. You can become the observer. You can have empathy and compassion for them, because you know once that was you. Once you would slip into that mode of rescuing, persecuting, or being the victim of the situation. How I have found peace in my life, and I'm not going to lie to you when I say I have found peace. Like, I was one of the most unhappiest people you would ever come across, with addictions of different kinds, personality disorder, mental health, diagnoses, and now I'm not on medication. I am the most grounded and balanced I have ever been, and this is because part of this work. Part of focusing on what I wanted and not what I didn't want. Recognising that I am only the victim of my circumstances if that's the role I choose. Yes, I'm a victim of things out of my control. But I now choose to become the observer of my life. And when things happen, I choose how I show up to that. Yes, there's going to be things that happen that I will be the victim of. I still get to choose how I show up to that. I can feel the victim and feel that and process that, but do I stay there? There's also going to be times that I could create myself to be a victim, and I have to recognise when that happens, which is very rare now, because when you start to have compassion and empathy for yourself and you stop entering the drama triangle, you start validating all your emotions, you start understanding that everything just is. Everything. Whatever happens, it just is. The only way that anything changes from that is how you deal with it. How do you face that? And there's lots of things that you can't change how they affect you, and you have to feel it and process it, and there's a form of grief. And there's some things that you don't need to feed into as much as you do, and it doesn't need to impact you as much as it does. It's actually, if you become an observer of it, you can go, that happened, that is crap, but I'm not going to allow it to truly affect me. I'm going to feel it and let it go. Or I'm going to do something about it. I actually lost a lot of friendships and relationships when I stopped entering the drama triangle. And that is a warning. You will. The people who thrive off drama, people who thrive off conflict, because unfortunately it gives them an adrenaline kick without them realising. It gives them a way of feeling inferior. People who like to complain, they do it because they feel inferior and they want to feel inferior. Because we're allowed to complain in life. But if you're somebody that's always moaning about something, always feeling shit about something, always needing to complain, there's a part of you that feels inferior. There's a part of you that doesn't feel good enough. So you have to find ways of feeling good enough. And that means by feeling better than other people in different ways. I mean, when you hear about the saying, I feel so much better about myself now I heard that something's going shit. We've probably all been there, but that comes from a place of inferiority. You feel inferior because when you start to build your sense of empowerment, you won't have an interest in anyone else's life. You don't necessarily have to wish them best, but you just won't have an interest. It's their life. If it's nothing to do with you, it's nothing to do with you. And it starts to create more peace in your life because you don't feel as attached to other people, as attached to other people's problems. I have friends that still go through stuff, and I no longer choose to rescue them. I am there for them, and that's completely different, but I don't choose to rescue them. And we have a much more fulfilling relationship. I don't feel ever used. And you end up bringing the right people in. Because, yes, initially you might feel like, oh, my life is becoming boring because you're so used to, you might even feel like, I'm giving in. If I don't have my say, I'm giving in. That's you entering the drama triangle. We don't have to be right. We're not giving in if we step back. We're just choosing where to assert our focus, and we're choosing our peace. I truly hope that you have got something from this video on the drama triangle. You can research a little bit more in depth if that is what you wish. Please do view some of my other videos. There are meditation videos that can help you cleanse some of your chakras. There is more meditation videos to come up. But understand this, knowledge is power. And I don't want you to feel shame and guilt if any of what I've said's resonated with you, because when I started to heal, I had to face that stuff too. I had to realize a lot of my own behaviors, and that is why self-awareness is so important, because how we behave, how we carry ourselves is basically what our life looks externally. If we're in a chaos and we're in a anger and we're in a shit inside, that is the type of life that you will be living. Namaste, my friends. Beautiful.